excited, but I know it's a little bit tight here. There's such wonderful artwork, but feel free to come in closer if you'd like. Wherever you would be comfortable. If you want extra chairs where I can get them.
You can actually just plop on the floor too.
I will
It's all good. Everybody turn away.
The ongoing problem is my real personality, that's for sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming to Tioga Arts Council. My name is Christina DiStefano. I'm the executive director here at the Arts Council. I'm really so honored and delighted to present Andrew Fitzsimmons' work. I've known Andy now since I've been working here 9 years ago, and I've had the joy and the pleasure of getting to know him through his art, but also his community service here in the village and around Tioga County. And this body of work is truly amazing. It started with a vision that he presented to New York State and requested funding to support, and this work was generated, all of it, I believe, in this year alone. So this is just one body of work out of many that he's done. So in addition to being a very accomplished artist, which you'll learn about tonight in this particular body of work, Andy's an accomplished teacher. He just reminded me that he's in his 27th year of teaching, plus adjunct work. And you know, that's just one facet of his life, but he's also very involved with community organizations like ours, working with youth beyond his capacity as a teacher, and so much more. So before we get started, I would like to say a few additional thank yous. First, I'd like to thank Cops for a Cause, the sponsor for this month's exhibition. They're very supportive of teachers in particular, and they've been working with us to support arts teachers as well. Also, we'd like to thank New York State Council on the Arts for providing the Individual Artist Grant Award to support this. And as always, I'd like to thank my board of directors. Andy is on the board of directors of Tioga Arts Council, and we're grateful for that. We have several other here, Nadine, Mike. Got it? Okay. And thank you to all of you for coming out on this bitter cold night, finding the park and walking here and coming to enjoy this truly wonderful exhibition that I find so inspiring because it's diving into mythos and origins, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Andy. Congratulations, and thank you.
All right. Thank you everybody for coming, especially the ASL babies, because you made it to Owego. So your job now is to come in the morning during the daylight and enjoy the village. There's tons here. This entire street is shopping and food all around us. So come stay the day, and you will be pleasantly surprised. Plus you got Owego Beer and Donuts down that way. You got a brewery right over here for anybody of age. I don't know if you're truly ASL babies or everybody's of age. But thank you for coming out. Please come back into the village and enjoy what we have to offer, because there's a lot. All right, so to kind of piggyback what Christine was saying, this was kind of in the make for about a year. I tend to, when I have to design a show, I've got to have a year to 2 years to develop the entire show itself. Just because the amount of sculpting and research that I do. About 2 years ago, right? Am I at 2 years?
Yeah.
All right, about 2 years ago, I had a solo show at the Roberson in Binghamton, and that was a massive space. So you can see we're limited in space here. So I knew that going in. I've been a member here for decades. So I know that the space is limited to what we have. So I kind of planned around that. So before I get into the theme, the overall show itself is kind of 2 parts. All right. You have the 3-dimensional sculpture in the round, and then you have the wall reliefs, and I'm going to call them tile reliefs. And I really wanted to utilize the wall space and bring up some other stuff that you typically won't see with what I do. Like I'm known for doing busts like this and clay vessels like this, but then breaking out and doing some relief work, I do not do. So you guys can come right in. Fill her all in, it's okay. So for me, during my college days, I have had sketchbook of ideas, constantly. So when I got down to, say, 2017, I actually had a show here, Dante's Vessels, based off of Dante's Inferno, and I actually created these large vessels and these sculpts of every level of hell while I was researching that. So I dive right into it. Now, this is for you guys, and you understand what I'm talking about what a card catalog is. And I would spend hours. I was an awful writer. I would spend hours in the library. I would go in and I would just take up tables. I'd have card catalog stuff out. I had books. All on doing my research of what did I want to do for the work. I've always been an artist that kind of harked back to the ancient arts in the ancient times and the stuff that we've lost. Mankind has developed technologies in the ancient times that we've lost. And just by look at Easter Island moving the heads, that's lost. Or the giant cave art and the giant cave buildings built into rock is lost. So for me, I've always kind of dove into that, and I wanted that to come through. So that's an underline of all my work that I do. It doesn't matter what my theme is, but that's kind of a basis for all my stuff. So the theme for this is Mother Gaia, and the idea of supporting Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, that nurtures us, gives us life, and what does that mean? And many cultures have explored what that means through imagery, through word of mouth storytelling, through actual visualization, through the artwork, and through documentation of the written word. So there's stories through all cultures. So I kind of started with her, Hathor. All right, so if you go back, Greek god of the harvest, I wanted animals of the horn. So I wanted her to be my kind of first one. So I made her right before probably the end of 25, right? And the kind of the idea of what I was going to do for the show. And then the only kind of work, there's 2 works here that'll hold off from my other show. That's this vessel right here with the faces, and I'll explain them. And then Sicily in the window. So these 2 pieces hark back to my other show, but I thought that they stemmed some of the ideas that I was doing here. So my other show was based off of Metropolis in the 1927 German movie based on dystopia, and go watch it, look at it, research it. So the whole show was based off that. But what I wanted to develop was a sense of storytelling through the human condition. So what happened is you have elders in cultures, you have the ancients in cultures. So all the vessels that have faces all kind of themed as ancients telling stories. All right? So all the vessels are faces, all made up of faces. So I've taken that into the Mother Gaia sculpture right here, and you can see the growth of her hair is the birth of humans with the faces. So side note, if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand and ask. We freestyle here, so anything, doesn't matter what it is, please ask. So once I started to develop the show, my first couple, once I got past I was gonna get them on the Gaia, then I wanted to figure out what was actually gonna be my sculptures, my figurative stuff. So then I started to look back and see what culture said about a compass, north, east, west, and south, and the colors that are wrapped around that and how they depict. So if you stand here, this is due north, right here. So you have north right there. So north comes across as green energy, as earth energy, and then you have the Gaia of the west, which is gonna be water. So you look on, if we look at the United States and you look at the coast, you have that feel of water. The south, of course, with the heat and the fire, and then the east with the wind. And the colors that kind of popped into the research are what you see on the surface, all right? So the surface color is a little bit different. So these are sculpted as a single armature all the way up through, clay mounted. And then what I do is then it's hollowed out. So this piece, these are all hand painted. So the only stuff that's glazed are the throne works and then the facial stuff. Anything, the relief stuff is all gonna be glazed, and then I have special kind of glazing that I did for that. But all of the large sculpts are all hand painted, and I do that on purpose. I did glaze Hathor because I wanted that green for her, for it to be that more organic, natural feel. So this is a underglaze that I fired to full temperature, which means that my bisque fires at 1944. When I fire glaze, I fire around 2400. This glaze is meant for 1900, and I took it up to 2400 so I could get the bubbling and I could get the texture on it. So when you start looking around at the faces, I'll describe them in a second, but the faces were done with different glazes that were oxides. So oxides you can mix with regular glaze to enhance their color. So I did not mix them with other glazes. I just mixed them as raw. I took them from powder form, washed them up, and then glazed them because I wanted them to have a specific look. So these on the wall hark back to where Gaia started, Greek mythology. Right? Gaia was born of the universe, and then she gave birth to what was going to be her future husband and her brothers that were also going to be her lovers. So Greek mythology is all about that imagery. So when you look at it, all of this is all Gaia, and then Pontus, and these are her offspring. So then this is Gaia with Uranus and the Heptites, and then I have Uranus over here with the Cyclops, and all of these are the Titans from Uranus. So then when you start looking at them, and if you have a history, have a knowledge of Greek mythology, you can kind of pinpoint what they do, but feel free to take photos of everything and research as much as you can. And you'll notice that the work all has the original sketches for the piece mounted on the tag. I started doing that years ago. I was a member of Cooperative Gallery downtown in Bennington. I don't know if you guys have done an art walk yet, downtown. Ever go to Cooperative Gallery? I was a member down there. I had a show where it was all vessels and it was figurative stuff, but on the wall I had large charcoal drawings of the pieces, and I did salon style, hung from the ceiling to the floor. So I've always tried to take that idea of process and put it into the actual piece itself for people to see how I got there. So all these are all original sketches that, of course, shrunk down, photoshopped down, and plopped down. So I tend to draw with pen, no matter what. Like I'll sit down and just draw, and I sketch really, really, really quickly. So that's why those look so raw. And I think for me, I've always had that as part of my process. And I think because I'm an educator, I want people to see process. I want you to ask questions of how you got that, how you did that, and how can that even happen. So, for instance, this one. This is all, I'll let you guys come read this. This is, for something that has some really massive historical reference, like the Titans. So I have the literature on the wall that kind of explains that. Amy and I actually went to a show in Buffalo a couple years ago, and the artists had their statement and their label underneath the work, and then they had a page about that much of just info, giving away the entire piece. Instead of forcing you to look at it and you get something from it, they're telling you what you should get. And that should never be the thing with art. Everybody should always look at a piece and you're gonna gather what information you wanna get from that. You may like it, you may like the aesthetics, you may not like this piece, and that's the way that's supposed to be. But to kind of be force-fed of this is what you should think about the work, I've kind of stayed away from that. But when I base a work off of a actual sculpture that's out there, then I want to give an understanding of why. All right. So the Tassili with the horns in the window is actually the running woman of the cave. So if you go back to ancient work 40, 60,000 years ago, you're going to have paintings in caves. That's from Algeria. And it's actually a running woman, so I actually have the actual image on the label of the woman, and then an artist rendition of what that looks like when they take it off that. So what I did is I wanted to make her as a representation three-dimensional. And then her horns are actually from my master thesis show from 1998. I made a giant elephant mask that was massive, and I carved the tusks, and then I saved them. The elephant doesn't exist anymore, but I saved the tusks, so her horns actually slide out of her head and slide back in. So to kind of go back to why research is massive for me when I do my art, in 1995 I spent the summer in the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire. I spent the entire summer, I went through Drew University down in Jersey, and it was a summer program where we went and studied traditional life, sculpture, and ceramics. So for me, that kind of stemmed that. So when I got back from that, I had my master thesis, and it was all the work that I made when I was in Africa, and it was all the stuff that was inspired from my time there. I even have the original pot that I made. I actually was in a potter's village in Abidjan, and men don't touch clay in this village. It's all run by women. So we were visitors. So we came into the village, and she was Sinufo. She was probably about 75 years old, about this big. So since I was a visitor, I was allowed to actually touch clay. So we started making coil pots. Making a coil is pretty freaking universal. So I'm making my coil pot. I got halfway done with my pot. She comes over to me, starts screaming at me in Sinufo. I have no idea what's going on. Picks up my pot, slams it on the ground, and then starts to show me how to roll a coil. And it's just what I did. So that experience has always been also an underlay to how I work and how I go about it. One of the massive aspects of art is that it has such a profound impact on human existence. Sometimes, currently, we may not appreciate it, as is the world today, but we wouldn't be here without that. So I think when I go through and I want to create my work, I try to go back and capture as much research as I can to bring back and have it come through the work. So if you go back to her, techno-wise, she's massive. My kiln's not that big. So my kiln fits probably about 27 inches deep. So I actually sculpted her, cut her in half, fired one piece of it, and then fired the other half, and then bondoed it together. And Amy has informed me I am too old to do this anymore because it is too heavy. Lucky I have a stepson to help me carry this stuff. So the rule is now I have to make two pieces, and I have to plan accordingly. So, thank you. Looking out for my welfare. So like, she's heavy. And she's heavy because the inside of her is actually looking like a honeycomb for supports for the hair. Because what I'll do is, same thing, sometimes you'll see an armature where artists will have come up in a big round ball and they'll come around, they'll use foil and wire. I don't, I just use a single rod and I just sculpt right to it. I like the energy of that. I like the physicality of that, but then I have to cut it all apart and hollow it out and put it back together. And for me, that's all part of my process again. And all of this stuff that I hand paint, I'm doing it with paintbrushes like this big. Now, I own a spray gun, so I could do an air thing on it, but I chose not to. And I do that on purpose again, because I like the physicality of going through paintbrushes. I don't use expensive paintbrushes. You go to Michael's, you know, the big stack of paintbrushes for $8. Yeah, that's me. So I'll just go through and just kill paintbrushes, but that's okay, because I want the physicality of getting in there, rubbing the paint in, rubbing the wax, rubbing the patina in, and I've got layers upon layers upon layers on these, and that's, again, part of the process. And I also think when you're dealing with artwork that you are trying to pay homage to something historically, you want to try and still be accurate, but still have your artist's voice as part of that, if that makes sense. That you still want to understand where everything is coming from, but you still want to be able to have who you are come through the piece. And I think that kind of goes along with everything that I tend to do. So the large vessels, these are all thrown and then sculpted and altered. This one, as is all of this over here, are just kind of separate pieces that I just did with the kids. We did a pit fire a couple months back where I got together with another high school teacher and our kids did pit fires outside. And then we have a raccoon festival coming up in the spring at the high school, so we are like super jacked for that. And for people that don't know, horsehair, right? If you've ever seen the process of raccoon, you heat up a piece that's been bisque fired, which is not fired to maturity. You take it out of the kiln at about 1400, it's glowing, and you then take the piece and you lay it into metal trash cans or pit with organic material, leaves, pine cones, pine needles, newspaper, all that kind of stuff. It starts to flame up, it starts to smoke, you cover it, and you let it do its thing, and oxidizes inside, you take it out, and that's when you get all that bright color. So all the color that you see here are from rubbing some of these oxide glazes onto it, wrapping it in foil, and putting it into a pit of fire, and then continuing to do and add fire to it. And these are done with horsehair. So what you do, this one is not horsehair. So I don't use any horsehair. I use my hair and I use Amy's hair. Because my hair was down to here like 2 years ago, a year ago. So I tend to traditionally grow my hair out when I work on the show. So when I had a 2-year show for the Roberson, my hair was like down to here. I did not grow my hair out for this one because it was no time, it was chaos. So you take it out, heat it up, you mount it, and you actually take the hair and drop it down. If it sizzles, it's hot enough, that's how you get your pattern. If it starts to smoke, that means this is cooled too much and you're not gonna get your pattern for your horsehair. So when you guys come back into WeGo to go shopping, and you go over to we have a couple other art galleries where it's all based off of artisans for sale, you'll see raccoon stuff. So you definitely will see those. Let's see, who else is funky to talk about? Also, I made half of this at school. All right, so the way I work is, I'm a firm believer, and some people may not agree with me, but if I am not an exhibiting or selling artist, I shouldn't be teaching. It's a thing. I say the same thing about music and writing, but you know, that's just me. So I am a working artist in the classroom because the kids will sculpt with me. So for example, when I teach how to do facial features, I actually built these little triangles. The kids will put their clay tile onto it, and I have a big Promethean board, and I have a camera. So when I'm sculpting, they're sculpting. So that's how they learn how to do facial features. So for my sculpture class, we have a human figure unit. We start with the figure, with the facial features. We then learn the history of the green man and green woman and what that means, and then they make their own. Hence some of these, it's the same kind of flow. And then we study the history and the uses of gargoyles, and then the kids sculpt gargoyles, their own versions of a gargoyle. So that's the whole human figure unit. And I teach 9 through 12, so the kids that do that are 10th graders. And then when they're juniors, they take my advanced classes and that kind of stuff. So they'll see me working on this. So these, I actually started these in school, and I didn't want to press my luck with the nudity, even though, you know, I teach at Shenango Valley. It's a quasi-conservative school. So, and I'm never one to shy away from that at school, but I still kind of watch my bounds. I get it to a point and I take it home and I finish it in the home studio. So they see me sculpting. The heads, I did that one in school because when my kids start self-portraits or they start doing anything that is a large bust, I sculpt with them. So then they can see it as they go, they can see different levels of it, and then they know what to do when we finally do it. So that one was created at school, and then the vessels were actually thrown at school for demos for the kids as altar vessels. That one was specifically designed for the pit fire. That one was specifically designed to look like that. Sometimes when you start kind of cutting away at a pot and it takes away from the original shape of what you think it should be, people are like, what'd you do? What went wrong? That's specifically designed like that. And then for the faces, now the tines, I actually made a stencil for both sides. And I had these little crafty plastic faces. You've probably seen them. You can get them at Michael's or AC Moore, no longer AC Moore, or Joann's. So I have all these plastic faces. I actually poured plaster in them, and I made about 65 of them, and I cast over the face. So I get a general image of the face itself, and then I do all the individual sculpt. Now you'll notice that with my figures, I leave almond eyes. Okay, so there's a couple reasons why I do that. The first one, if I was to carve a pupil into it, it freaks her out. So to give an idea of how this goes in our household is we have a huge living room. You walk in, art everywhere, and in the corner, I have a massive studio space in the living room. So what I do is I'll actually take the heads, I take these, I bring them on my turntable, and I paint while I'm in the living room with the family. We tend to do that like all the time. So we have her space upstairs, her yarn room, her fabric room. I have one little tiny chair that I get to come up and sketch with, because her room is filled. So with this, I'll hand paint this, but with the eyes, I tend to leave them almond because I kind of think of them as mysterious like that. Because when you start adding pupils, then it's like, now you have a direction of where they're looking. And now you have another kind of thinking or theme from it. And what I mean by that is I want people to get something different from this, whereas if I was to sculpt pupils, I'm going to do an ultra realistic portrait. Right? So when I sculpt people for a commission that is going to be a real life person, then I'll do the pupils. When I'm doing mine, I prefer the freedom of what this does. So sometimes people don't like the aesthetics of that, but I do all my eyes almond, so it doesn't matter the size, but I tend to do that for all of them. A couple of them, I think this new series, because I've already started with a new series. So when I came in, we had a free sketch night here. A couple people came in to kind of sketch and do some writing. So I developed my new project that I'm going to do. So I'm going to go way back to the ancient arts, way back to ancient civilization before the Egyptians, back when we had the technologies and they're gone. And I'm going to take that and then I'm going to mix it with industrial images of the 1900s. So I've already got stuff sketched out and like ready to go. But that one I am going to do pupils, because that one I have specific things, like I'm going to do a father time that I want to have eyes. I want to give it age. doing the pupils allows you to give a little bit more age, whereas with this is kind of an umbrella of age. We know they're ancient, we know the theme of Mother Gaia is ancient, but I wanted to keep it somewhat guessing to where it came from, other than referencing what I did. So with the Greek on the wall, we know that's where it stemmed from, and then in here where the compass ones, I kind of wanted where this is a little bit more nomadic in the sense in its thinking. So I wanted to kind of point to where cultures and people have been traveling and moving from different areas over time and living there, picking up, moving again, different views, different ideologies follow that. So that's kind of the stories behind doing the compass sculptures that I want. Questions? That was a lot.
How much failure do you experience while you're doing something like this, or something that you put into it?
Okay, so you ready? Okay. So this one, I had two other pieces, and I sculpted them in my studio in the middle of the beginning, and like maybe towards beginning of December. Nothing was drying out, and we had to get opened up for January. So I fire all of this at a candlelight temperature, and what that means is you can, at 200 degrees, once you get past 200 degrees, that means moisture will heat up and do what? Expand, right? So I candlelight for 5 hours. So like she went in 5 hours, and then my kiln cranked up, and then it fired after the 5 hours. So I rushed this, and I put it in for 5 hours. Oopsie. I should have probably did 24 hours. So the two sculpts that I lost for this was actually the beginning and the end. So the beginning was 2 hands sculpted in human form, and then clay dripping, and then the hands were wrapped around like this. And then the end was based off of the Willendorf woman icon, embracing the people as they go. I was like, no. And I did it all in this fantastic black stoneware, and I lost both. But, you know, when I got here and I started setting up, I go, I have one more room. So that's okay. And like the Robeson show, I probably lost, I made a golem out of clay, and he blew. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I gotta make another. And then that one blew up. So the clay gods were like, nope, no making a human form from a golem, so we're not gonna do that. So I stepped away from that bad juju and said, no. But some stuff will blow, but because I do so much extra work to it at the end, like Aether right here, all these horns I actually will jam into the clay and sculpt. And then when it starts to season and dry, I take them out and I carve another 1/4 inch of clay away from the hole that they go back into, because clay will shrink. So when clay's in the kiln, what it'll do is as it heats up, your molecules in clay start to go like this. They heat up and they go like this, like this. And then when they cool, they go like this and they bind back together and turn back into stone. But by doing that, clay is alive. So what happens in the kiln, it breathes. It goes up and then it comes back down, and you lose about 12 to 15% shrinkage depending on the clay body. So I know how big I need to make my holes. But what I do is I use Carbondo to actually mount these back in, and all of this coming out is actually Bondo that I carve and I make it look like it's morphing from, the horn is morphing from that. That's how she got back together. And then this one, this Mother Gaia, I couldn't fit in the kiln, so the top of that was cut off and Bondo back on as well. So I can get away with Bondo and fixing mistakes. But when those blew, when those two sets blew, vaporized. I'll tell the story some other day for you. I won't go into depth, but I did do a self-portrait of Amy for my last show, and it just went, gone. So,
Is that what we
That's
did?
it.
yeah, so I'll leave it at that, But yeah, I did her whole torso and she had a big, huge oval eclipse, it was awesome. So, roundabout way that answers your question.
How long does a Bondo stay reasonably intact?
Forever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, people use it on cars,
Yeah.
so it's like, it's the same premise. Yeah, so I mean, I could come in and fill any massive hole with it. Somebody, another artist, Mike, I think, told me when he was in college, a professor would have, now this is back in the 50s, so that means safety, there was no such thing as a safety thing. So he would have his sculpting kits buy cans of Bondo and sculpt full sculptures with it, with no ventilation, no face gear, no eye gear, and you can't inhale that stuff. I mean, I'm all like jammed up like that. When I have my clothes on, I'm not allowed to go near the house with my clothes on after Bondo. So that's gotta go outside, they gotta wash them with the hose, and then they go into the washer. There's rules. But yeah, so Bondo stays for pretty much ever.
How difficult is it to get a larger kiln? I mean,
Nah, it's just cost.
It's just expensive.
Yeah. Mine is, I can fit 27 high, 25 wide, and that kiln at that time, which was what, 10 years ago? 12 years ago? 12. Was 3,500. So kilns are once you get into clay, the kiln is the most expensive thing. Once you buy it, it's done. Then glaze becomes the more expensive thing. For instance, I was talking about like the raku. That raku clay isn't as strong as raku clay maybe 5 years ago because you need to have a high level of talc in it. But the ceramic companies, the clay companies can't get talc anymore because all of the toilet bowl companies have bought up the talc mines. So ceramics becomes very low on the totem pole. So ceramics in the past like 5 to 8 years, the pottery and ceramics have taken a massive hit just with the minerals and chemicals that you need to mix everything because it's being dispersed to other corporate levels for consumption on different levels. So yeah, we've taken a hit and clay's gotten more expensive. And clay most of my clay is from the West Coast. So if you come to Owego, spend the day in the village, and go down to the sweet antique shop down here, you're gonna see the gray stoneware. Most of that's North Carolina. So most of that is all from the south, and it's a certain clay body. Besides the glazing that's done on it, it's a certain style of clay. Whereas the West Coast, I'll get my terracotta from the East Coast, and then I'll get my stoneware from the West Coast. And then I get all my stuff from a local clay supplier in Syracuse called Clayscapes Pottery. Anybody got any more questions?
Have you ever used like local native clay, like from the brick pond or from?
That's a good
from,
question.
creek?
Kevin, you sound like my kids. They're like, oh my God, I got a creek in the back, can I use it? Yes. You can dig clay out of any creek that you have. You gotta go through and you gotta siphon out all the stones and impurities. You gotta break it down to a powdered form. You gotta then add water, wedge it back up, let it sit, and then you can make tests on it in a kiln to see where your firing temp is. Is that like just random like ghost music?
Maybe it's your phone.
Maybe it's my phone.
You set your phone
I did say.
So maybe, is this gonna go on the road somewhere again? I mean,
Some of it is. Some of it is pegged for Alita in August. Some is pegged for the NYSADA show, the Art Educators Show. That is also going to be at Cloudcroft. If anybody's here this summer, we got 2 major exhibitions coming. And then we also have another Art Educators Show coming up in March. I'll probably throw a couple works of that from this. And then I'm not sure, Cooperstown has their national regional, so a couple of those pieces will go.
I love the but I love the whole intactness of it, the way you describe and explain the story, to see it broken up, it becomes a different thing.
Yeah, well, 100%. And after I did the Robeson show, and I started taking those pieces, showing, then, you know, the title is like, what? Because it's not flowing with what that show is, which is fine. They're meant to be broken up eventually, but I, you know, it's, okay. Side note, my goal when I retired was I was gonna be a potter of chip and dip. I was gonna make chip and dip bowls and mugs and bowls, and I was gonna go on the craft fair market, and I was gonna go do craft shows. And then I thought about that, and I was like, that's a freaking job.
How long ago was that?
Yeah, that was probably about 15 years ago. I thought I was gonna do it. So that is a job unto itself. So I used to do a show up at Letchworth State Park, where I'm from, and it was a 3-day show, and I sold out all the time. But that's 6 months of just making mugs and bowls, and that's not what I want to do. So I've had right. Oh my God. So I've had so many ideas in sketchbooks for years and years and years, that in 2017, when I did my whole vessels, Dante vessels, I was like, enough, I'm gonna do what I want. You know, it took me like 40 years as an artist to finally get to that point of where I'm gonna do what I want, and if you like it, you do, you don't, doesn't matter to me, but it's out there. And that's where, like when I retire in 3 years, I'll never sub again. I'll never go into sub, I have too much work to do. Anything else?
Andy, I'm curious about the vessels. When you were making them, were you channeling uses of them in ancient times? Like, did they have ceremonial purposes or everyday life purposes or some combination?
Yes and no. Like this one is made as a container to hold, and depending on what culture and what people you're talking about, vessels are used and containers are used in many different things. They could hold salt, they could hold water, they could hold flour, they could hold beer, they could hold wine. So it all depends on if you're using it for more of a functional or an aesthetic kind of view. But the point for the faces are, I wanted something to represent the ancient people. Like, storytelling needs to be told by elders of a group of people over and over and down and down and down and down. So then those stories of those people don't die. So I always for me, I always picture faces. And the faces aren't detailed because they could be of any culture, of any people, and any story. But there's a group of elders and ancients that are a collective, bringing that story through the shape of the pot or the vessel and what it means. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, I love that.
Where do you store things that don't sell?
I own a storage unit over there. I had to after Robeson. So I build shipping containers for all these. And when they sell, I just leave the head in the box and they just go. But I have no place at the house. So in the studio, my studio is 25 by 16, and there's no way I can hold any of the work. So I actually had to go get a storage unit that has like, you know, $150,000 worth of work. Sorry. Insurance. Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and please wander around, take a look at the art. I'm still here. Ask questions. If anybody's hungry, Originals is open. You get to walk the streets and see what we have.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And for the ASL babies, it was like a 20-minute drive, not like a 45-minute drive. Everybody thinks that we live way out in, my high schoolers are like, you're 2 hours away.
I have a personal question.
I have a
Do you know
personal-
anyone there?
I do.